It is time for Shannon Reads Those Books, book number 8, Black Beauty. Hey everyone, it is Shannon, and I'm excited to share my thoughts on Black Beauty, the 8th book for the Those Books exploration. And I also read this for the Book to Film Challenge. I'm going to do a separate video for that, but this is in its Those Books context. So there you go. Black Beauty was written by Anna Sewell. It was published in 1877. I don't know. This is really early. I'm trying to think of. Wonder if it's one of the earliest of those books. That's on a different spreadsheet. Okay, focus. It makes those books list for being number 58 on the BBC Big Read, and I'm actually a little surprised. I thought it might have been on more lists, but that is the one list that it's on. Now, I chose this book because it's also going to be a film adaptation. I saw the trailer for it last year, and I was like, I have to read this book, so that's really why I chose it. And I forgot my little cards. Oopsies. Anyway, my next question about the book is, did I understand it? And I would have to say yes, I did understand it. It was very clear and very easy to understand. I thought of it as a children's novel, but as I did some research afterwards, it's sort of regarded as a children's novel, but that was not its intention when it was written, and I'll get to that a little more about that later on. So the test of did I understand it? What is it about? It's about the life of a horse, and often the hardships of horses. It's from the horse's perspective. The horse is often, but not always, called Black Beauty. He goes through many different owners and has lots of different life experiences as a horse. And actually, I have to say one of the reasons why I chose it was also because it was from the perspective of a horse. I don't think I've read anything from the perspective of an animal before, but I don't know how much I'd like that, to be honest, because he often didn't regard himself as very smart, and I didn't like that. And then I can't go talk to a lot of horses and ask them how they feel about that. So it's kind of left me a little like, I don't know if any creature, great or small, would think of themselves as not smart. So anyway, that got me a little. My next question is, did I enjoy it? And I would have to say not a whole lot. It really reads like, and actually its intention was, it reads more like a PSA, a public service announcement about how to treat horses correctly, or the effects of treating horses badly or incorrectly, or not understanding them, or not having patience for them, or not realizing. A lot of it is about, because it's from Black Beauty's perspective, who I always just in my head said Beauty, not Black Beauty, from his perspective of being dependent on, humans to do the things that they needed to do so that he could do what he needed to do in terms of, carting people around and do, so it was a bit weird that way. I guess also because for me, I have no references pretty much for horses. I've never been horseback riding. I've seen horses. I see horses at the CNE when I go, which is hopefully every year. But usually from not that far away, like 5 rows back, and then it always seems to be the really small horses, not young horses, but smaller horses, and they run around and they jump over things, and people or presenting them and stuff, and but I don't know horses. I'm a city girl, so never had the opportunity to go horseback riding or anything like that. So I don't know. So I guess I would say I learned a lot about horses from reading it. So that was cool. But a lot of that is how much care that they need, how dependent they are on the grooms and hostlers. I think that was the only term that I didn't do definitions for this book, but that was one that I did look up, but I don't know how to say it. But which is literally someone who cares for horses. How dependent they are on being, cared for, whether that's rested or fed, or have their hoofs, have their feet cleaned and have the right horseshoes and all this. I don't see, even now I don't even really know. So that's I did enjoy that element of it. So because it's so foreign to me. Another question I have is whether or not it was what I expect. Was it what I expected? And I would have to say hell no. Like I knew it was about a horse. I knew it was from the perspective of a horse, but I really thought it was the tale of a girl and her horse. I'm not now thinking back. I may be meshing it in my brain with National Velvet, and or Black Stallion. I don't know about Black Stallion. National Velvet, definitely. I think it's Elizabeth Taylor as a young girl. She's in the film version of it. And I also, when I rewatched the trailer for the upcoming film, it's like, oh, well, maybe I'm getting it from there. But I did not think it would be like this. I did not think it would be toned like a PSA. And for me, that did detract from the enjoyment because I already believe that. So it's sort of preaching to the converted. And so to go through and to see and to hear about, the hardships of the horses was really challenging because I really felt strongly that they shouldn't be mistreated or ill-treated or ignorantly treated or whatever. So that was sometimes hard to be with, but I did end up really liking, I always liked the character of Black Beauty, and the other horses that he meets, so I definitely felt strongly for him, and some of the humans too, not as many, but some of the humans too, and so, like, I did find myself, like, sneakily feeling more and more attached to him, but I kept myself at a distance because I was always really worried that something bad would happen, because it has that sort of, let me tell you the story of something bad happening. And stylistically there was something weird in there. I don't know if it's a time period thing or if it's a British thing, or I don't know what it is, but often the title of the chapter would say like the entirety, sort of like what the big climax of that chapter would be, and or he would say, Black Beauty would say, I'm not going to tell you the horrors of this day, and then proceeds to tell you the horrors of that day. So sometimes I thought in particular was really weird because like either you're not going to tell us or I don't know, so or you are, and if you tell us you're not going to tell us and then you tell us, and that just feels a bit strange. So I don't know, maybe it's a sort of, maybe those kinds of things made me think why someone would put it in a kids book category, because then it's sort of like, this is the story about the meadow, this is the story about the log cabin. I'm fictionalizing, this is not what, well, I'm sure there isn't a log cabin. Actually, I did not know it was in England. That was one thing I didn't realize all of a sudden. I was like, oh, they're in England. I thought it was in the States. I don't know there was some term that made me think it was in the States, and then they said something else. I was like, oh, this is British. Yeah, okay, so I don't research a lot before, which is fine. So yeah, it wasn't what I was expecting, but I did come to enjoy it in some ways, but I wasn't overly attached to it. And of course, that awkwardly leads me to my question about whether or not I'd recommend it. And it's for me, it's hard to sell it as something because I didn't particularly love it, but I would say if you are looking to read classics and to get into classics, it is one to read because it is very easy to understand. It's very accessible. The language is accessible. The stories are, I think, even though it's specifically about horse, I think the stories and principles are pretty universal about treating people like whether it's horses or anyone, so I found from that perspective, and it wasn't that long, it did take me the whole month to read it, but I was reading it very, just like a chapter or two here and there, even though the chapters are only a couple of pages. I liked when I read things for those books, I really like to think about them, so I don't rush them, but when it got towards the end of the month, I had to give myself a bit more of a schedule so that I would get to it before the end of the month. Not that it was hard to read or anything like that. It's just it is a bit like, it's easy, but it is a bit heavy because there's a weight of things that could go wrong. So I guess it's not really where I like to be in the world of books. I don't like that so much. So, and one of the other things I often think about is whether or not I would read more of the author's work. And in this instance, this is the book that she wrote. She wrote it late in life, and after doing some research, which just means reading Wikipedia, I didn't realize that it was published just a few months before she passed away, and Anna Sewell, she had an injury very early in life and was unable to walk without assistance of a crutch or a cane, so she ended up, traveling by horse and carriage a lot, so that seeing the things that she saw in traveling that way inspired her to write this book, not for children, but for people who actually handle horses, so that they would have a more sympathetic and empathetic and caring relationship with horses. That was her intent, was that it was for horse handlers, so that they would, be more, careful and loving towards the animals, and not just sort of treat them like a machine, or a means to an end, that they are living creatures and deserve that. So, as I said, that's sort of, for me, you're preaching to the choir. I already believe that, so I get that, but it reads like, if there's one thing that, to be honest, there was one thing I was going to take away from the book, that's what it was, that's what the message is, and everything else, although there were characters I liked and moments I liked and good stories and stuff like that, I felt like that message was so strong that it was hard to sort of pick out some of the other stuff. So anyway, I did really enjoy it. I know, is that true? I did end up enjoying it, and but not as much as I had liked, and I had to keep coming back to it, so I don't know what that means. I had to keep coming back to it. Anyway, I did finish it, and that is the 8th book on the Those Books list. I actually have no idea what I'm going to read next. I guess I've been really wrapped up in the book to film challenge, that I know what I'm reading next for that, but I don't know what I'm reading next for those books, because sometimes the lists relate, but they don't for February, so I guess I will, I might, the Book Jazz is doing a continent challenge, and in February, the challenge folks are reading books from Africa, and so I might look to see what on the Those Books list is from Africa and see if there's any that I can get my hands on. So I might do that, and but I'm not sure. I am not sure. So we'll see. That was Black Beauty, and if you're interested in my review, that's Book to Film, or Book to Film challenge specific, I will link it below. All right, thanks so much for watching.